welcome to our fourth video tour in Middleton Hall. Today we'd like to show you some of the gardens and grounds here at Middleton, showing you the different types of plants and wildlife we have here. So for those of you that do not know much about the garden's history, in 1669 Middleton's owner Francis Willoughby began to look at the different types of plants and trees growing here at Middleton, which led him to conducting experiments with his friend John Ray, the famous naturalist, on the different types of sap movements in the common sycamore, willow and walnut trees. It was through his studies at Cambridge that he met John Ray and forged a lifelong friendship and scientific partnership. Willoughby and Ray shared an interest in the natural world. However, whilst Ray remained primarily interested in botany, Willoughby went on to specialise in zoology. Willoughby and Ray travelled together throughout Britain and on the continent studying, collecting specimens and classifying them. Together they established a method of classification which anticipated the now accepted Linnaean system by some 50 years. After Willoughby and Ray's time, nature remained at the heart of the Middleton estate. Interest in the different species of plants and animals led to Thomas Willoughby, the first Baron of Middleton, constructing the gardens in 1717, which we walk through today. The main reason for the garden itself was primarily to produce fruit and other kinds of produce. So here, near our entrance, we have our oldest trees, which were of course planted to produce the fruit. The large mulberry tree dates to be around 200 to 300 years old. In more recent years, our volunteers removed the old greenhouse, which was unfortunately past the point of repair. We believe this greenhouse would have originally been used to grow vines, figs and tomatoes, with a separate cucumber house. However, to keep the tradition of growing produce here at Middleton, today we have a vegetable patch and our very own orchard. Here in our orchard we grow a variety of apples. Our main ones include our cooking apples like Bramley seedling, Blenheim orange and Spartan apples, amongst lots of others. We also have lots of other varieties such as the Discovery apple, which are bright red on the outside with pink inside. These apples tend to be used to make pink apple juice. And also the Ellison orange apple, which is one of our strongest varieties here at Middleton. It is an eating apple which has an aniseed or licorice taste. One of the first things you see as you approach Middleton Hall is our 16th century pool. Although originally built slightly earlier, the original pool was much smaller and used as a fish stew pool, which was changed by Sir Francis Willoughby after he discovered it would not provide enough hydraulic power to his blast furnace. Today the pool is now an important site for breeding birds and is a site of special scientific interest. Of the different flora species present in our beautiful pool, we have 123 different species of wild flora here at Middleton. These include the stunning white water lily and the bee orchid. As I'm sure most of you know, the white water lily is fairly common in the UK. The plant favours slowly moving water, so you may have seen these in your own ponds at home. Surprisingly, what some people do not expect is due to the plant needing basic requirements of water and an undisturbed area to grow, they can sprout in bizarre areas such as ditches. So the lily itself is around 30 centimetres across due to the large leaves, and these plants tend to grow in water up to 5 metres deep. Something very interesting about white water lilies is that they are perfect for our wildlife month, as they are plants which provide shelter for frogs and early nectar for insects. Our lilies that we see here around Middleton bloom between June and August. Originally, the white water lily was grown at Middleton in the early 20th century for an economic purpose. A small industry was created where lily pickers would go to Middleton's pool and pick around 6 lilies. They were then packaged and sent to be sold at Covent Garden to hotels to be used as table decorations. If you're at home wondering how to identify a white water lily in your area or even your garden, it has rounded floating leaves, are large white flowers that are sometimes tinged with pink and are borne on stalks just above the water. In comparison, the yellow water lily has more oval leaves than the white water lily and the small cupped yellow flower. Moving on to some of our more common plants, the bee orchid is a plant commonly found here at Middleton and is named after its main pollinator. To attract bees so it can pollinate, it grows flowers to mimic the bee's appearance. The bee orchid is one of the most beautiful and well known of the native orchids in Britain. Although it is not a common species and is less frequent than it used to be, it can still be found in the Midlands and other areas such as Suffolk. So to recognise the bee orchid, it can grow up to 30 metres in length, the stem itself is green and hairless, it's around 10 to 15 centimetres tall and displays a number of relatively large flowers with pink sepals that look like wings and furry brown markings just like a bee. Sadly, the correct species of bee doesn't occur in the UK, so UK bee orchids tend to be self-pollinated. Bee orchids typically have a preference for chalky soils and sometimes occur on boulder clay. However, unlike some orchid species, it is also known to tolerate neutral soils and even occasionally sands and gravel. It can be found in grasslands such as damp meadows and woodland rides, and at Middleton, bee orchids can appear in very high numbers for a few years and then disappear if competition is too great by more vigorous grassland species. Bee orchids may only flower once in their lifetime, which explains their appearance in large numbers in some years and disappearance in others. The seeds germinate in the spring and can take as long as 6 years before they reach a flowering stage. Bee orchids are protected, as are all wildflowers, under Section 13 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act. This section prohibits intentional uprooting of any wild plant. In addition, because orchids are particularly slow growing and may only flower once in their lifetime, it is important to never pick the flowers. Now, something we really wanted to show you is our animal wildlife here at Middleton, as it's somewhat of a speciality. We are extremely lucky to have both a water and woodland area which has attracted a variation of wildlife over the years. Over the last 20 years we have counted over 136 species of bird, including 46 pairs of breeding birds. Here we can see the kingfisher and mute swan. Kingfishers are probably one of our rarer animals to spot, but are attracted to Middleton due to the flowing water, and like the lowland areas we have here. Although rare, kingfishers are found from January to December and are colourful birds which visit due to our pool. They can be spotted sitting quietly on low-hanging branches over the water, suddenly diving in to catch a small fish. Kingfishers like to live in burrow-like nests near lakes and other waterways, choosing a perfect spot for fishing. So to spot a kingfisher, they typically have a striking mix of colours. Their bright blue-black and metal copper breastplate make the kingfisher unmistakable. Males have an entirely black bill, whereas females have an orangey-red patch at the base. The birds are around 15 to 17 centimetres in length, have a wingspan of around 25 centimetres, weigh around 40 grams, and unfortunately have a short lifespan of around 2 years. Moving away from our pool, our moated area located at the front of the hall is home to many mute swans, which we have seen arising our numbers in recent years due to the better protection of this species. As you can see, these beautiful creatures look like your typical whooping swan, but if you look closely, mute swans have a different beak. Berwick and whooping swans have a yellow and black bill, whereas our mute swans have an orange and black bill. In addition, mute swans tend to be silent, whereas whooping swans have a loud whoop whoop trumpet type call. In terms of size, mute swans typically are around 1.5 metres in length, with a wingspan of 2.2 metres. They weigh 9 to 11.5 kilograms and compared to other birds have a lengthy lifespan of around 10 years. Similar to kingfishers, mute swans can be seen year-round and they can typically be found gracefully gliding on our waterways and water bodies. Mute swans typically feed on the waterweed present in the moat. Moving on to our woodland birds. Middleton's woodland includes around 35 species of land birds. These include the great spotted woodpecker and willow tit. As you can see, the great spotted woodpecker spends most of its time clinging to the tree trunks and branches, often trying to hide from its observer. Listening out for the great spotted woodpecker's distinctive drumming is the easiest way to tell if the species is around. You might also see the holes the woodpeckers have made in the tree trunks when hunting. Sighting this bird within the woodlands is often difficult, as these birds can be shy of humans. The best views are often available in your own garden, where woodpeckers are attracted to feeders containing nuts and seeds. Once you hear the woodpecker, to spot it, they have white cheeks with black lines underneath and a black cap. Males can be identified by a red patch on the back of its neck, and they also have a pale breast with black upper parts, and a bright red rump with their wings, which are black with white spots. Great spotted woodpeckers are not as large as many people imagine, being slightly smaller than a blackbird on average. One of the reasons the great spotted woodpecker is attracted to places like Middleton is due to the large variation of insects to feed on. Insects such as caterpillars, beetles, and sometimes even spiders are the woodpecker's main prey, so Middleton Hall's Nature Reserve Walk is the perfect attraction for these birds. Traditionally, the woodpecker uses its powerful beak to hammer holes in tree bark and then extracts beetle larvae with its long, flexible tongue. Throughout the year here at Middleton, the woodpecker will adapt its diet, mainly focusing on insects all year round, but also in the springtime, branching out into the chicks and eggs of smaller birds which are often eaten. Species that nest in tree cavities are targeted, as woodpeckers can use their beaks to access these spaces. Towards the wintertime, nuts and seeds become an important food source. One of the most intriguing aspects of the great spotted woodpecker is its amazing breeding technique, where the beak plays a key role. Males use their beak to hammer against dead trees, making a drumming sound. This proclaims ownership of its territory and warning off any rivals. Such activity would cause brain damage among most birds, but woodpeckers have a shock-absorbing skull, means they are not affected by the impact. Once a mate is found, the beak is then used to excavate a nesting cavity within a tree. Once the hole is ready, 4 to 6 eggs are laid inside in around April or March. They hatch after around 2 weeks, and chicks spend just over 3 weeks in the nest before fledging. The willow tit, however, is a slightly rarer bird, with willow tits now unfortunately featuring on the red list of conservation concern in the UK. Changes in land uses and woodland management of broad-leaved trees has reduced the specific habitat which many woodland species depend. Alongside this, competition from other tit species, for example blue tits, have been increasingly occupying the nest hole that the willow tit has excavated, meaning spotting this bird is rare. The willow tit is strongly associated with wet woodlands and willow carr, growing in wetlands, bogs and around gravel pits. It is so similar to the marsh tit that it was not recognised as a separate species until 1897. Willow tits eat mostly insects, but will also branch out into berries and seeds when food is scarce in the winter. They use their small bills to excavate nest holes in decaying wood, which is unusual among the tit family. The females lay between 6 and 8 eggs in a clutch. So on the rare occasion you do see a willow tit, it is black, pale brown and white in colour and is easily confused with the marsh tit. However, it has a pale panel on the wing and a sooty black cap and bib. It has a distinctive nasal ZZ call, which is often the most reliable way to identify it. Similar to this, willow tit's wings show a pale panel not found in other tits such as marsh tits, making the species unique in comparison to its family. During the breeding season, willow tits feed mostly on our insects here at Middleton. From the start of autumn and through towards the winter, they feed on seeds, berries and occasionally nuts. They store food, especially in late summer and autumn, and can be entirely dependent on this store during the winter. Finally, our moths and butterflies are our speciality here at Middleton Hall. We have around 400 variations of moth, with 149 micro moths and 216 macro moths, and a range of rare butterflies uncommon to the Midlands. One of our rarer moths, the lead-coloured drab moth, was recorded in 2006. This moth is actually more likely to be seen around this time of month, particularly in areas containing aspen. The lead-coloured drab moth is a nationally local species that is found across much of the UK. It is usually a woodland species, but can be found in most places where the food plant occurs. This particular moth has a wingspan of 34 to 40 millimeters. It can be rather similar to the clouded drab moth, but is usually smaller with a lot more rounded termen and subtle differences in the hind wing. The antennae of the male lead-coloured drab are much more obviously feathered than the antennae of the male clouded drab. Moving on to butterflies, one of our rarer butterflies includes the purple hair-streak butterfly, commonly nicknamed Mr. Gray's purple streak, named after our Middleton famous naturalist, John Ray. In total, Ray recognised 47 British butterflies and recorded data on moths, beetles, wasps, flies, fleas, ticks, worms, leeches and spiders. Ray, alongside his friend and colleague Francis Willoughby, was particularly interested in the studying stages of metamorphosis, which provided the life history of each species. The purple hair-streak butterfly is considered rare around the Midlands, as it has a habit of flying in the tree canopy, where it feeds on honeydew. Sometimes the adults are seen basking at lower levels on various small trees and shrubs. The butterfly itself is dark brown in colour, with the bright flash of purple running through the middle of its upper left and right wings. Something really exciting is that there has been a recent increase in records of sightings of this butterfly, especially in the Midlands and southwest Scotland, which may be related to improvements in the atmosphere. So do you think Francis Willoughby and John Ray would be pleased to see that Middleton has continued to be an extraordinary home to a range of plants and wildlife? Thank you for watching our Wildlife at Middleton video. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to check out our children's activities where they can make some buzzy bees, some ladybirds and some butterflies. Thanks for watching. Bye!